The hour is, will the former president Jacob Zuma be appearing tomorrow in Pietermaritzburg? It certainly looks increasingly unlikely, as we understand he is still in hospital. I'm joined now by my colleague Thulasizwe Simelane in Pietermaritzburg. Thulas, thank you so much for joining us. So just give us the very latest that you are hearing around the possible postponement of this case.
That's why it's headed, Sally. It's looking more and more like it will be a case of a very brief virtual appearance as opposed to an appearance in person inside courtroom A, which is what former President Jacob Zuma prefers. He prefers to be here in person, and hence that, tug of war that happened in the last few weeks about whether or not he can be present virtually for a criminal trial as per the prescripts of the Constitution, that, a person who is accused and standing trial has a right to be present when their matter is being heard, when the trial is being conducted. Former President Jacob Zuma prefers to be here in Pietermaritzburg in person as opposed to joining virtually from the prison in escort. But right now, after all the work that has gone into decking out the courtroom A inside here at the High Court, and all the preparations really by the police, including bringing large numbers of police officers, rolling out kilometers of barbed wire really that have been rolled out around a park which is nearby, just adjacent to the court building. It's a park that's popular with former President Jacob Zuma's supporters. It's where they normally hold those rallies in his support. All that work had been done. The journalists were here. We had set ourselves up, ready to bring that argument in that Section 106(1)H application for the removal of Billy Downer, the prosecutor, only to have a spanner in the works with former President Jacob Zuma going to hospital on Friday, and correctional services through Singabako Nxumalo telling us that he remains in hospital. Take a listen to what the implications are from the understanding of prosecutors. Listen to the NPA's Mthunzi Maga talking to me a bit earlier on.
All right, I don't think we have that bite with us at the moment. But Thulas, just maybe summarise what Mthunzi Maga said to you. And I understand you've got another interesting interview as well lined up from the Jacob Zuma Foundation.
Absolutely. Yes, we do, Sally. So essentially what Mthunzi Maga was saying is it confirms that everyone is on the same page. Correctional Services is on standby. If they are told to bring him to court, they will, because he's in their custody. The NPA says they will not be opposing the application by former President Jacob Zuma's legal team for the postponement, because they believe that it will be a substantive application brought before Judge Piet Koen with an affidavit from former President Jacob Zuma, the doctor who's attended to former President Jacob Zuma. Also on the same page is the Jacob Zuma Foundation. Take a listen to what Mzwanele told me earlier on about what their understanding is from their side about what tomorrow's proceedings will be like.
From the foundation side, we're very ready, or in fact the legal team of His Excellency President Zuma was very ready to carry on with the case. The only intervening thing now is this medical issue, which was a long pre-arranged date. And we keep making the point that whether President Zuma was in jail or not in jail, this date would have been there. Even if he was not in prison, this date would have been there. So indeed, this is what has happened. It's just unfortunate that this date has coincided now with being in prison, has coincided with courts and all of that. So that is the issue. So other than that, the team has always been ready, including President Zuma himself, both psychologically and otherwise. He's been ready to do this trial. It's really a pity that we've got this situation that we have now.
So was this always scheduled to be a stay of multiple days in a hospital facility?
What typically happens, as you would know, when you do a medical checkup, is all kinds of tests get run on you. But I suppose when you are a former head of state, There are other protocols that need to be in place. When we are at that age, there are much more things that are involved that I don't know. So I suppose all of those things are what are at play right now, because it would be silly to say this is just a simple situation like you and I would go in and out and so on. We're talking about an elderly statesman here, and we're talking about medical processes that are prescribed for heads of state. So I suppose those protocols are what is at play right now.
Without asking you to disclose his condition, which naturally is something that can't happen, what are you able to say about, is he unwell?
The first point to make is that we do not have a situation where on a Friday morning, President Zuma was rushed off to hospital because of ill health. That is not the case. We just have a case of somebody that has been going there for a routine checkup. In fact, yesterday, he was in such a condition that Advocate Mpofu was there to see him. He had to consult and all that. So if you could do that kind of consultation with the Advocate Mpofu, it shows that we're not talking to an ill man here. We are just being conservative and playing by the rules and playing by the doctor's instructions. But President Zuma is in high spirits and all that. It's just that we are just bound by the medical protocols.
What are you able to say about the processes then that come into play, given that, you know, this was a set date for the arguments in this application that we're talking about for the removal of the prosecutor, and the various filings and documents have already been exchanged between the legal parties, and the stage was set. We were set to go into the ring, as it were. But it's becoming quite obvious that that's unlikely. What are you able to say about the processes in play? What is the legal team doing at the moment to try and, perhaps formalize the situation right now?
Look, the legal teams have been engaging with each other, and I'm happy to announce that they've reached some kind of a consensus position. So there isn't going to be any opposition of any sorts when they approach the judge tomorrow, because both of them are working on the same set of facts. And I think the NPA is clear that this is not a game that is being played here. They've got facts at their disposal. They can make their own independent assessment. They can see that this is genuine. So they've agreed that they're going to have a clear way forward, that both teams, as we speak here and now, are both agreed on, and they're going to present that to the judge to ask the judge to make a way forward. So indeed, tomorrow, let's just be clear that tomorrow is going to be a hearing for a postponement, really. It's not going to be a 106 discussion. It's going to be a postponement on when to hear the 106 discussion.
Lastly, you touch on something that, given our history in South Africa, our recent history, and the levels of mistrust between various, approaches to politics, you will have people who will be skeptical. A few minutes ago, one of the people I encountered here in Pietermaritzburg was asking me if the court case is going ahead. And at the moment when I said, well, there might be a postponement, the words were, oh, this man is playing games. And you allude to that because I think you are alive to that there will be those who will be cynical and be saying that he's merely playing games. We've seen this Shabir Sheikh treatment. This is how it's going to be. He's going to be in a hospital ward for the next few months, and this is just one of those Stalingrad strategies to delay things. What would you say to those who will harbor that kind of thinking?
Yeah, I think the time has come for people of South Africa not to be malicious when it's not even necessary to be so. And I think the clearest sign that this is genuine is going to be displayed by the fact that the NPA is not going to be opposing this. The people that would be much more sensitive to these issues would be the NPA. And if the NPA was opposing, then you'd have a reason to be concerned. But if the NPA, which is going to be inconvenienced by this postponement if it's granted, if they are cooperating, it means that they can see that the situation at hand requires such a hearing for a postponement. So if NPA is not complaining, anybody else that complains and makes all kinds of malicious remarks, those remarks must be rejected with the real contempt that they deserve.
All right, so that was Simelane of the Jacob Zuma Foundation. Interesting points that he made there. Let's listen to exactly what the NPA said a little earlier. Here's Tunzimaga.
We are of the view or understanding that the legal team of Mr. Zuma, the former president, will be making a substantive application before the High Court tomorrow, before Judge Kroon, indicating that their client, Mr. Zuma, is hospitalized, and as such, they are unable to proceed with their argument for a recusal of Advocate Billy Downer. We are unlikely to oppose that application if there is an affidavit from the doctor who examined Mr. Zuma to the state of his health. So we are unlikely to proceed tomorrow as the matter stands. And this will be a virtual hearing because Mr. Zuma is unlikely to be in court tomorrow. Otherwise, as the prosecution, we were ready to meticulously argue against the application that they were going to make for the recusal of Advocate Billy Downer. But these are circumstances that unfortunately are beyond our control.
All right, so Thulas, it seems that there's a broad agreement that this is not going to happen tomorrow, that there seem to be very clear reasons why it needs to be postponed. So do you see anything getting in the way of a postponement? And also, what does this mean about this much delayed court case?
Well, in as far as the delays are concerned, Sally, I can tell you now that all it does really is push it back. It's the usual thing of, we come here ready. Everyone says we are ready to proceed until the very last minute something comes up. This is one of those circumstances where, it was meant to be quite a heated discussion, as it were, around the issues of whether or not Billy Downer needs to be removed. And let's not use the word recuse himself, because what former President Jacob Zuma is applying for is for Billy Downer to be removed. Going by what was argued in the papers that were exchanged between the parties, Sally, I can tell you that it was going to be certainly a fascinating discussion because, there was a point and a counterpoint, multiple counterpoints between the two parties that were going to be argued now, putting voice to what you have written, to what the legal teams have written, with the Judge Piet Koen being the final arbiter on those points of law and arguments that were going to be raised. But once again, we're in a situation where we have to kick the can down the line a little bit more. The question now is, how long is this postponement likely to be, Sal? Because the Jacob Zuma Foundation insists that this was a routine checkup. I've put the question to Singabako Nxumalo a couple of times to say, routine checkup, was it always meant to be a number of days instead of just one day or a couple of hours for that checkup? Is Mr. Zuma unwell? The answer